Hello everyone. So today we will study about cases in German. So like English, to make a sentence we need some elements in the sentence which will make a full standalone sentence explaining something. For example, we can have a sentence in English: I eat. So this is a full sentence and it explains something is happening and somebody is doing that something. For example, here I, who is doing the activity, is the main subject of the sentence, and then there is an activity which is defined by the verb. And together subject plus verb can come make a full sentence, and then mm, that can also be extended with adding more things to the sentence by adding objects. For example, I can say I eat ice cream. So now in this way what I've done is I have added another thing which is an object. So in this sentence, activity is being done, which is done by somebody who's subject and it's a doer. And then that activity is defined by a verb, and then the doer while doing this activity affects something, and that affected thing is the object. And in many cases, when if we have one object which is directly being affected, then we call this also direct object. So in a similar way, we have for the German sentences the subjects, verb, and the object. So for a simple sentence, for example, here we say der Hund bellt. So this translate to English in the dog is barking. So in the same way, we will try to find out there's a doer who's doing the activity, and then we have an activity which is being done, and that makes our full sentence the simple sentence. So the in the English form, we have the dog who's doing the activity, and what he's doing is barking, right? So their Hund belt. So if we follow the logic from before, then their Hund becomes the subject, and then we have the verb. So if you have something like this, then the subject is called in nominative case. The subject of the sentence answers the question who is doing the activity, or what is doing the activity, right? So here, who is doing the activity? Their Hund, the dog, is doing the activity, and then the dog is in the nominative case. So the dog has this nominative case. Now you can, as I said before, you can also have a doer who's doing an activity, and because of the activity there is something which is getting affected, an object. So for example, here in the sentence, we can look at the structure. For example, ich sehe den Hund. Ich sehe den Hund, which in English translate to I see the dog. So now we try to split what is the subject, verb, and the object. Then we see I will be the subject, C is the activity being done, and because of the activity, what is being affected, which is the dog. I see the dog, and the dog becomes the direct object of this sentence, and this object then belongs to the accusative case, the direct object, and then it answers the questions like what is getting affected or whom the activity is directly affecting. For example, is there then Hund? So here what is getting affected, that I'm seeing a dog, and then this object can be a person or a thing. So here person means like a living thing, and the thing means an object, a non-living thing. So their Hund was an object, it's a person, or which is directly affected by the action. Now in the same sentence or the similar kind of sentence, we can also have two objects. So if both the objects are a thing, then they will be in accusative, or both the objects are the person, then they can also be in accusative. But if an object is a thing and another object is a person, then the situation is different. For example, here in this sentence, ich gebe dem Hund eine Knochen. So now let's translate it into the English. Sorry, I give the dog a bone. So if we follow the structure and try to find out what is the subject, we see I is the subject, give is the activity being done here, so this is the verb, and then we have two objects, which is a person, a living thing, and a thing, right, a non-living thing. So as I said before, if you have two objects, so the non-living thing becomes an accusative, and the living thing, the person, is here not the direct object being affected by the activity but an indirect object, and that takes a new case called dative. So the indirect object here, the dog, it answered to whom. For example, to whom I am giving the bone. I am giving the bone to the dog, right? And then also you can identify in the sentence like who's receiving something due to an activity and who's the action is benefiting to. So ich gebe dem Hund eine Knochen. I give the dog a bone. So eine Knochen, which is a bone, is our direct object, and this takes accusative. And then we have to whom I am giving, to the dog I am giving, so it is an indirect object. And then we have a subject and the verb, and the indirect object takes dative, and then our subject is always in nominative. Okay, now we can have a case if we have a person and object, which is shown this example, then always the direct object takes the accusative, and then the indirect object takes a dative. This is true when the direct object is a thing and the indirect object is a person. So what is being affected, right, and then to whom is the activity benefiting, or who's the receiver, then these are the question. But if in the sentence we had the two object and both the objects were thing, then they both are in accus accusative, right? For example, ich ich gebe dem Hund einen Knochen und Wasser. So here we have two things. So the bone and the water. I give the dog a bone and water. So that will be in accusative. Ish is in nominative, who's the doer, and dem Hund is in dative. So when we have more objects, direct objects, indirect objects, so if there's a person, living thing, that goes in dative, and the non-living thing, they go in accusative. So that's the easier way to find out in a sentence, and then accordingly you can find the structure of the sentence. For example, we can see this new sentence: ich gebe dem Mann den Brief. So ish, we have the subject, because it is the doer. I am doing something. What I am doing, I'm giving. So that's our verb, and subject is in accusative, have the verb. And now I have two objects: they man, the man, then brief, the letter. So I am giving the man a letter, or the letter, right? So the letter is an object of the sentence, object 1, and then this is object 2, right? But as I told you, when you have two objects, So the person becomes dative. So this will be in dative, and then object one, which is a non-living thing, it will be in accusative. So this is our direct object, and this is indirect object, and this gives our structure for the full sentence. So whenever you see a long sentence, you can try to answer some questions as given above. For example, you can ask who is doing the activity, that will answer for you what's the subject, and then what is being affected by the affecting, which is activity is verb, which is given, I'm giving something. So what is being affected here, which is the brief, the letter is being affected, I'm giving it to somebody, right? So that answers our what. And then what is being affected and who's receiving, and then it answers the question to whom, I'm giving the man the letter, so it answers it to whom. So in a long sentence like this, you can try to find accusative case. Sorry, this is nominative, and then you have accusative and dative case, right? And then you can try to answer these questions, and you can find the elements of the sentence. So in the next video, we can see in more complicated way how these cases affect the sentence, different kind of y- articles which are associated with the object gets affected because of this. Then there is uh, another case which is genitive, which shows the possession or relation to the doer. For example, to, it answers the question whose, right? So or of the kind of question. For example, the Farbe des Hundes is brown. The color of the dog is brown. So now you can see that the dog is our main subject, but there is this information about the subject, which is whose, right? And it answers whose color is brown. If I ask the question whose color is brown, the color of the dog. So the color of the dog, this kind of possession is shown by the genitive case. But this we can see in detail in the next videos or upcoming videos. But the most important cases are our nominative, accusative, dative. Nominative is for the subject, accusative is direct object, and dative is indirect object, and they answers different question: who's doing the activity, what is being affected by the activity, and then to whom the activity benefits, and who's the receiver at the end. So this wraps up this concept, and so then we will meet in the next video.